On the 16th of November 2016, The Guardian published an interview with the former Bury defender Andy Woodward. In it, he recounted the serial sexual abuse he had received from his former football coach, Barry Bennell. He told The Guardian's chief football writer, Daniel Taylor, that the number of other victims within football would run into the hundreds. At the time, Taylor was unsure about using the number. It was almost unimaginable. He did, and the story instigated the largest ever police investigation of sexual abuse in the UK. On the 8th of January 2018, Barry Bennell, the man at the centre of the scandal, stood trial, charged with 55 offences. He admitted 7 charges of sexually abusing 3 boys, aged 11 to 14, but denied 48 other counts relating to 11 boys from 1979 to 1991. During a coaching career that spanned 3 decades, Barry Bennell carved out a name for himself as one of the most successful talent spotters in English football. He managed teams from Greater Manchester, Cheshire, Staffordshire and Derbyshire, as well as 7-year associations with Manchester City and Crewe Alexandra. Bennell collected countless nicknames and aliases that he used during his 25 years in football, but 2 stand out. Both the Star Maker and the Pied Piper are as troubling as they are illuminating. From the late 70s, Barry Bennell was paid expenses by Manchester City to run nursery teams to supply talent for the club. During his stint in Manchester, Bennell claims responsibility for having surfaced players such as Andy Hinchcliffe, Rob Jones and Gary Speed, to name but a few. However, it was also in this period that Bennell abused David White, a member of City's golden generation that won the 1986 FA Youth Cup, and Mark Williams, the former Northern Ireland international. Despite his apparent success, Bennell was suddenly ousted from City after 7 years. Jason Dunford, who played for Bennell at the time, recalled how the team were told that City weren't doing enough for schoolboys. It was considered general knowledge in coaching circles that Bennell was a man not to be trusted. A number of parents have also confirmed that they removed boys or prevented them joining his teams because of their own suspicions. But none of this stopped Barry Bennell. From City he moved to Crewe Alexandra, where he flourished, helping to create what was considered one of the best youth academies in English football. Also, thanks to an inexplicable lack of due diligence, it was where Bennell was allowed to continue his campaign of abuse against young boys in his care. It was at Crewe that Bennell came into contact again with Mark Williams, as well as Andy Woodward and Steve Walters. Steve Walters lived in Plymouth. He was one of the many boys that would stay with Barry Bennell on weekends and during school holidays. It wasn't uncommon for 3 or 4 boys to be staying at any one time, in a house with bunk beds and sleeping spaces to accommodate up to 11 children. Many have told how the place was set up like a children's paradise, with rooms filled with gambling machines, jukeboxes and arcade games. There was a room packed with boots and sports goods where the boys could take what they liked. It was at his houses, or on trips away, that Bennell would test those he sought for abuse, playing horror films to them and snuff videos that he kept under the floorboards. He would take them into the woods late at night and to abandoned houses to deliberately frighten them, knowing that if the boys were scared, there was more chance of them sharing his bed. Bennell's skills as a manipulator were not limited to the children in his care. He had parents wrapped too. Mark Williams described how all the mums fancied him, all the dads wanted to be around him. He had a hold over everybody. He wore designer labels and drove expensive cars, far from the dirty old man in a Mac image. He arranged holidays and trips with parents, where his real motive was to be alone with their children. One group of mums even used to clean his house. As the gatekeeper to so many boys' potential success, the trust and control that he held was absolute. In the most extreme case, when Bennell was finally arrested in America in 1994, some parents set up a Friends of Barry Bennell fund to raise money for his legal costs. But that money was lost when Bennell broke the $100,000 bond. Under orders to keep away from children, he had been caught coaching and filming a team of under-11s. Barry Bennell's luck had finally run out. A 13-year-old boy, terrified he might have AIDS, told his parents what had happened to him on a trip to Florida. Bennell was arrested and given a 4-year sentence after admitting to buggery and indecent assault. The American authorities described Bennell as a monster, having an almost insatiable appetite for young boys. It was the beginning of the end for Bennell. In 1998, he was extradited to England to face a further 45 charges. He admitted 25 offences committed against 6 boys aged from as young as 9 to 15. He was sentenced to 9 years. Released in 2004, Bennell moved to Milton Keynes under a new identity as Richard Jones, but he was sentenced to another 2 years in prison in May 2015 for a historical case involving a 12-year-old boy on a football course in Macclesfield. But now, finally, Barry Bennell will face the true scale of his crimes. Barry Bennell's patterns of abuse were consistent and recurrent. Worse still, they were detectable. They were suspected by many, raised at league meetings, even official complaints were made. Yet still nothing was done. Questions will always remain how Bennell was able to have access to young boys for so long. In Crewe's case, there has been no explanation why Bennell was allowed to continue taking children home, when their former managing director Hamilton Smith has stated the club received a specific complaint about their coach being a paedophile. Norman Rowlandson, Crewe's late chairman, had been concerned enough about Bennell to contact Manchester City to ask them what they knew. But at the same time, he was actually paying him extra for arranging for boys to stop over. Some questions will forever remain unanswered, due to a number of individuals at the 2 clubs now being dead. We will never know what they knew and what they did or didn't do about it. It took years for the majority of Barry Bennell's victims to come forward. Some never will. Many continue to live with serious psychological effects as a result of his abuse. From the moment Andy Woodward broke his silence, the number of allegations grew. What was uncovered was an unprecedented scandal in British football, one that still leaves many questions unanswered at all levels of all sports.